To go further in depth, we're joined by Pat Buchanan, the political commentator, former presidential candidate, and author of the book, The Greatest Comeback, How Richard Nixon Rose from Defeat to Create the New Majority. Mr. Buchanan, in addition to serving as a senior advisor to President Nixon, also served as the communications director for President Ronald Reagan. And Pat joins us by phone from Washington. Pat, this disturbing news of the beheading of a second American journalist. If you were counseling President Obama right now, what would you advise?
What I would advise him to do, JD, is this is clearly an act of barbarity, and it's also a provocation of the United States. I believe this occurred in Syria, and what I would be doing is I would be talking to the president of Syria, and this is a big call. I think ISIS is our main enemy, not Assad in Syria, and tell him that the United States was planning, we had intelligence on the people that did this and the people that ordered it, and we had target information, and we intend to strike them, and we would like you to clear the area of any anti-aircraft guns. And then I would make a strike, but you have to do a deal, I think, first on this with Assad. There's no question, JD. We got to run down and we have to punish the people that did this. This is a deliberate provocation and an outrage, and the murder of a cold-blooded murder of American. As Teddy Roosevelt said, Perdicaris alive or Raisuli dead. And I think that's the attitude we got to take, but it's a big decision in this sense. I think that ISIS being the main enemy, that we are going to have to deal with a bad actor named Assad, because one of the two is going to rule Syria in the near-term future. And for my money, I would prefer Assad.
This is shades of what happened before the first Gulf War, Pat, when President George H.W. Bush reached out to the father of Assad, then ruling Syria. So they struck a deal, made him part of that tenuous but ultimately successful alliance. Sounds like you're offering similar advice this morning.
Well, I ran against the first President Bush, but he was dead right there in that he wanted to go to war and drive Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. And Syria had an army there, and he told the Syrians that if you join our coalition and send 4,000 troops, which they did, I don't know that they fought, but we will try to get you a meeting in an international forum where you can discuss your demands and your arguments with Israel in a diplomatic forum. So that's right. I mean, you have to deal with the real world. And the real world, I think, in the Middle East for the United States now is that ISIS is the main enemy. ISIS is the one that is out to kill Americans. ISIS is the one that's going to be sending terrorists to the United States. And therefore, we have to work with the Kurds and the Turks and the Syrians and the Iraqis, and maybe even as we have with the Iranians and others, in order to defeat and crush and annihilate it. And I think that takes real diplomatic skill. In World War II, when I was a little boy, J.D., before you were born, we had to get in bed with J.V. Stalin because we were fighting Hitler.
Here's the problem as you've outlined it, and I understand what you're saying, but when you mention Iran in the same breath with an unlikely alliance, there are the Iranians full bore after nuclear weapons. It is a very tenuous situation. Would you not agree?
Well, in this one, I would rely on Crocker, Ryan Crocker, and others who have made the same points that I'm making right now. They say that we can do a deal with the Iranians, that they have made concessions already, that they are further away from a nuclear weapon than they were when we first started talking. Secondly, the Iranians were aiding the Kurds up in the north when the Kurds just recently defeated ISIS in the battle to relieve that Amerli, that town of Amerli, where the Turkmen were surrounded and about to be murdered. So again, this is a very tricky business, and it's one of the reasons I think that the president has been somewhat hesitant. If you're going to defeat ISIS, who have been the main people fighting ISIS and who have taken casualties in that battle? They include, JD, now hold it, not only Assad, not only Iran and the Revolutionary Guard, but also Hezbollah has been fighting ISIS, and the Lebanese army. Everybody over there now is hostile to ISIS, it seems. I noticed the Iranians, for the first time, sent the foreign minister over to visit the Saudis, who suddenly awakened to the nature of the threat, the rival threat from the separate caliphate, if you will.
Well, as we talk about the president and his response, of course, he's in Estonia speaking right now. Earlier, he offered a statement really reserving the final 2 moments of his opening speech there in Estonia. Here is what he had to say earlier. Let's take a listen.
Whatever these murderers think they'll achieve by killing innocent Americans like Stephen, they have already failed. They failed because, like people around the world, Americans are repulsed by their barbarism. We will not be intimidated. Their horrific acts only unite us as a country and stiffen our resolve to take the fight against these terrorists.
You just heard the president there as our commander-in-chief conveying the right message.
I think that's the correct message, but I will say this. We're not sure that ISIS has failed in this, because I think one of their objectives, quite clearly when you do something like this, J.D., is to get the kind of reaction from the Americans that ISIS knew it would get and is getting. Question to me is, does ISIS want to provoke the United States into coming militarily back into that country of Iraq and maybe on into Syria for another 10 years the way we were in Afghanistan and Iraq? Are they trying to provoke us to come in there? Now, clearly, we ought to be resolute in going after and killing the people that did this, but we ought not let them dictate exactly how and where we respond, because they have a strategy of their own, even if we have not settled upon ours.
Pat, in that hideous video, the executioner called out our president by name. That's pretty bold and brazen. When you have that type of situation develop, what's your reaction to that?
Well, that's quite clearly what I'm talking about, J.D. He's going to do that. He's taunting the president. Again, this is a sordid criminal act, but it is also a provocation to the United States and a taunting of Barack Obama. They are trying, obviously, to get some kind of reaction. One of the reactions they want to get is, you hit us, now look what we can do to you. The great Satan. We're showing you how we deal with you for your bombing attacks on us, which have been pretty devastating in Iraq, in the sense that ISIS has been in retreat on about 3 separate battlefronts. So they are trying to taunt and trying to provoke us into a reaction. And before we take our reaction, we ought to think through the consequences, as in a chess game. What's going to be the next step, and the next step? Because while we do want to punish these people, we do not want another Iraq war. We don't want another Afghanistan. We don't want another Libya. All of these are huge messes in which we did not think our way through to the end when we went in.
And Pat, as you sound that caution, looking both ways, and before we cross the street, if I can use that metaphor, a couple of the New York newspapers in their tabloid form called out the president today. First of all, the New York Daily News, the headline from the front page, "Do you until we stop them?" Pat, final word to you, about 45 seconds left.
Well, again, that's one of the benefits, I hate to say it, of the ISIS strategy, is they've already split the Americans to a degree. Now, the question is, what are you talking about? Are you talking about defeating ISIS, annihilating ISIS? The only way the United States can guarantee it's going to annihilate ISIS would be to send ground troops into Iraq and ground troops into Syria to dig at every capital and every every province there. And we're not going to do that.
Well, Pat, you have framed a question for us. That is, in fact, our Newsmax TV poll today. Should the U.S. strike ISIS in Syria? You can vote on that poll at newsmax.com/poll. Our thanks to Pat Buchanan, and our program continues after this.